Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you guys how to do a sculpted gel nail, and we're going to do a reverse French. I did a Periscope on this the other day and I had such a huge response to it, and I know a lot of you guys aren't on Periscope, so I figured I should do a YouTube video for it as well so everyone can see it. I don't have a model with me today, so I'm just going to use my own finger. I've already done my prep. I've done my primer and my bonding gel and cured it, so we're pretty much ready to go. I'll just explain the steps along the way as we go, and then hopefully everyone can see. Okay, we're good. So I've placed my form on my finger, and you can see I've got a nice straight line coming off of this. I've already trimmed it a little bit just in terms of time saving, so you guys don't have to sit here and watch all that. So my form is fitting properly to my nail. I'm going to use a very thin coat of clear gel to build out my extension first. Make sure I'm still on the camera here. I'm just going to keep this a square nail today. And we'll go about that long. And when you're doing your first layer of gel, you want to make sure that you're getting a good coverage. Make sure you're tucking it into the corners. And you don't want this to be super thick because we are going to be putting white over top of this and filing and shaping. So you don't want it to be too thick. You just needed a nice thin layer. And I'm pulling this down a little bit over my natural nail as well. And I'm just going to clean up my edges before I cure this. We are going to pinch this, so I'm just going to do a really quick freeze cure on this before we continue on. I'm going to be using my LED light today. So for a freeze cure with the LED light, you just need about 3 seconds. Okay, so if you guys can see that, just a nice super thin layer of gel, and we'll just give that a freeze cure. Okay, now when you're pinching a nail, this seems to be a lot of confusion for a lot of people if you've never done it. You want to start right at the base of the nail. And because I'm keeping this shape square, I don't want to pinch too much at the very end. I want to make sure I have a nice square, and I want to get a good C-curve going, but not too tight. And because we are working with gel, we're going to hold this for a few extra seconds and make sure it's going to hold that shape once we put it back in the light. And that's looking pretty good. Can you guys see the curve that I'm pinching into it there? Okay, so we're going to cure this for 30 seconds and make sure we hold that nice strong shape that we've built in there. Okay, so back in the light. And this is the pink gel that I'll be using on my nail today. I've pre-mixed a color. Today for this one I've used the Balance Coverage Cool Pink, the Options Pink, and the Options Pink Blush. And it's sort of like a warmer cool pink. It's got a little bit more opacity than the cool pink does, but it's not completely thick. I like my colors to be sometimes a little bit different for each client, so I don't really have an exact mixing ratio for this. It's probably about 1/3 of each color. Okay, so when we're building out a reverse French, I'm just going to extend my own natural nail bed a little tiny bit, not a lot. And when you're using gel, you'll probably end up having to do this in a couple steps. So for the first one that I'm doing here, I'm just going to fade this down onto my natural nail. And I want to keep the part at the front of my nail in a bit of a curve to mimic your natural nail bed. And I also want to think about creating my smile line with this as well. So when you're putting on your white gel, you have a nice deep smile line. And don't worry if your edge on this end isn't perfectly crisp. We are going to be going back and filing this a little bit before we apply our white. So we'll just make sure we have the general shape to start. And then we'll worry about crisping it up after it's all cured. Okay. So I'm going to give this a quick freeze cure, just about 3 seconds in our LED again. All right, so we'll go back and do our second coat now. And I'm going to start at the cuticle with this one. And just carefully work my product around. And I'm not really pushing it too hard. I'm just kind of floating it around and using the sides of my brush to get in by the cuticle. And I'm just going to continue pulling my product up to the free edge of the nail here. And then we're just going to smooth that out. Okay, that's looking good. And we'll just touch that shape up a little bit. Perfect. So we've got a nice smooth application here. And I'm going to cure this for 30 seconds in my light. Okay, so this is cured, and I'm going to file this and shape this properly. So we're going to take our dispersion layer off of our gel, and I'm just going to leave the form on for this step. I like to leave the form on. It helps me see a little bit easier. You can take the form off. It's entirely up to you. So what we're going to do is file around this edge and sharpen it up. So you want to make sure that you have a brand new file. Otherwise, if you don't, it's going to take forever. And you'll notice how I'm holding my file. I'm keeping it straight up and down. So what we're doing is we're crisping up this edge. And we're making it have a nice straight up and down line. Because what we want to do is create a wall of pink. Can you guys see that okay? A wall of pink, so when we butt our white up against it, it's going to be nice and sharp and crisp. And you'll notice I'm filing down a little bit on my sidewall here. I'm not filing on my skin or my nail. I'm just tucking in my corners so I have a nice deep smile line. And plus you want to make sure your pink is even all the way around too. There's no lumps and bumps on it. And if you're making a really long nail, you can definitely make a really more super dramatic point on your pink as well. But because we're just keeping this a short nail and square, I'm keeping my pink a nice workable shape and workable length. Okay, so let's get the dust off that so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so I still have to file the nail bed, but if you guys can see, there's our wall, a nice straight line all the way around. So I'm just going to buff the rest of this here and get it back into a good shape. Okay, let's wipe this off again. All right, now that all our dust is off of this, we can see a little bit better. So there's my pink. I've got my nice wall here and a good shape to that. So next I'll be using an ultra white gel. I want a nice white crisp free edge. And I'm going to use an angle brush for this as well. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to use an oval brush for this. This is just a small oval brush. And the way I like to do this, I like to load the product onto one side of my brush. It's probably a little bit too much. And then I like to keep it on the far side. And I just like to tuck it in down on the corner and just bring it around this way. Everyone will do this differently. There's no perfect right or wrong for this. So it's whatever's going to work for you. And when you're using an ultra white gel, usually it's quite pigment rich, so you don't want to put on a whole bunch at once. You'll want to put this on in a couple of thinner coats just to make sure that it cures properly. So before we cure this, I'm going to go and clean this up here. You can see I brought my white right down into the corners here too. It's very important. I love deep smile lines. And you want to make sure that you've got all your product even on both sides. All right, so we're going to freeze cure this again, a couple seconds in our light, and then we will come back and do a second layer of white gel. So we're going to put on our second coat the exact same way as we did the first coat. Want to make sure you have a nice, smooth, even application. make sure that you're working up to your pink as well. You don't want to have too much of a gap in product there. And I'm going to clean up that white again, make sure that's nice and crisp. And I'm not really pushing on the gel much. Your brush will follow the line of pink that you have already created there. So I'm just sort of letting it glide along that edge. Okay, so we're going to give this a full 30 seconds in our light and give it a cure, and we'll be right back. Okay, so here's how our nail is looking so far. We're pretty close to where we want it to be. I am just going to take a very thin layer of Enhance, which is a really, really thin viscosity gel, and I'm just going to float it over top. Now this is why having our white so smooth is so important. If you have any dips, any highs and lows in the white, the clear gel will settle into that and kind of muddy it up a little bit, so you want to make sure that your white application is nice and smooth. So I'm just going to take a little bit of gel and we're just going to go right over top of here and pull this down. Right over the top, and I'm just going to pull this back a little bit over the pink as well, just to ensure that we have a nice smooth transition from our pink to our white. And I see that's made a huge difference in how our nail looks. And essentially when you're sculpting a nail too, you want to have all your work should be done with your building. You don't want to have to file too much because then you're wasting product to begin with, but this is what you would like to see when you're sculpting. You don't want to have to do too much work at the end. Sorry, I'm just going to touch this up right here. All right, so we're going to give this a full 30 seconds again in our light, and then when we're done this, we can file and shape this properly. Okay, so here's our nail out of the light. We're all cured. So I'm just going to go over this, wipe off our sticky layer. I'm going to take our form off. And when you're doing this, make sure you pinch your form at the free edge first. Pop that off, just in case it's stuck a little bit. All right, so let's file this and shape it properly. So we are just going to keep this square. So when you're filing any nail shape really, but square especially, I always like to start it off first, square this free edge off right away, and then that gives you something to work on visually, and then your side walls. And you can see our free edge is not thick. We're quite thin. It doesn't need to be a thick free edge. And then we'll just start shaping and filing this properly. And if you've done a good application with your gel, you won't need to file very much. I'm just using light pressure on my file. And I'm making sure that as I'm filing, I'm not taking away the arch of the nail. I'm not wrecking the apex or the stress area. And I'm filing a little bit differently on myself than I would a client too, of course, just because that's the way it always seems to work. Okay, let's get the dust off of this again. Okay, sorry, let me get the dust off my hand as well. There we go. So there is our buffed and filed reverse French gel nail. I'm going to finish this with a coat of shine on. You can use whatever top gloss you like to work with. Okay, so we're going to cure this in the light LED again for 30 seconds, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here's our finished nail. This is reverse French sculpted gel nail. Nice and thin. We have a good arch. We have a good curve. And this nail is totally strong, totally durable, and it looks awesome, if I do say so myself. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Again, the products that I used, I'll go over again for you guys, because this was one of the big questions that everyone had for the Periscope. The pink that I mixed up for this nail, I used the Balance Cool Pink, the Options Pink, and the Options Pink blush, and that gave us this really pretty sort of mid-tone cool / warm pink. And then the Control Ultra White, and a little bit of Enhance, just for floating over the top. And then the Balance Shine On, or sorry, the Accent Shine On. So this is our finished product. Happy little sculpted French nail. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch up with you next time. Bye.